In 1690, Cathay would launch a doomed expedition westward into the Southlands. But their ships would end up being scattered by an eldritch storm. Their ships would eventually make their way to the High Elf eastern colonies of Tor El-Azor. It was there that the wary and sickly Cathayans received aid at the High Elf Sanatorium. Soon, rumors would spread of the horrors being inflicted upon the patients there, and the spirits of those once tortured souls have now come for revenge.
They will not live to see another dawn!
Happy Halloween, Mech Squad! Today we are covering the creepiest, most horrifying mod for Warhammer, the Jade-Blooded Vampires, Islanders of the Moon. This lets you play as a new undead faction complete with its own story, unique spells, new units, and more. And we actually covered the original mod, the Jade-Blooded Vampires, years ago back when it first came out. But I never got around to playing this new Islanders of the Moon add-on, and this mod has blown me away. You play as Zhu Yaoji, a master alchemist from Cathay who is one of the many Cathayans who met an unfortunate end at the High Elf Sanatorium. In this campaign, you seek revenge against those who wronged you, as you also seek to unravel the mystery of what happened at the sanatorium. Now, a cool part of this mod is that it's definitely inspired by Silent Hill. It's got a haunted hospital, creepy undead nurses and doctors, a haunting mist, the spirit of a girl bent on revenge, and she uses chains with hooks as weapons. Super cool stuff and one of the most fun campaigns I've ever done. Speaking of, if you want to watch these live campaigns, you can do so under the live section on my YouTube page. So going deeper into the mod here, you'll start where it all began, at the old burned down sanatorium. It's here you will start your campaign of revenge against the elves and more. Your lord acts as a horde, bringing with her the horror and destruction of the sanatorium. And as you grow, you will build out the different rooms of that haunted hospital, like the dilapidated laboratory, where the Asur and Cathayan doctors alike labored in such facilities to find the cure of the plague afflicting the locals. Zhu Yaoji had a special office here where she worked sleeplessly on her research. Or Surgery Unit 207, where the Asur were master doctors and surgeons, but the high mortality caused by the plague eventually gave rise to the association of death to such rooms by the patients, notably by the Cathayans. You will also have access to unique rights, including one that lets you recruit a unique lord with powerful abilities. You'll also be able to unlock cool buffs, abilities, and unique regiments of renown that all give you little pieces of lore to the story, like Patient Kai Lin, also known as the Woman Who Jumped, who died at the age of 27, or Patient Ming Lu, known as the Contorted Man, who died at the age of 34 under mysterious circumstances. Another big thing I really like about this faction is that it plays so differently from any other faction. I'll show the lords, heroes, and units here in a second so you can see what I mean. But what makes this faction really stand out is the fact that none of your settlements have walls. Whether it's a minor or major settlement, defending with no walls and a limited garrison will be challenging. This faction also has no artillery, very low armored units, so basically forcing you to take the fight to your opponents as quickly as possible. They also have a faction-wide debuff for all your units called the Plague of Sleep, which will hit your units with multiple debuffs if their vigor drops below active. And all your armies will take attrition as well as soon as you step foot off of your own territories. It doesn't matter if you're at sea or on a friendly undead ally's piece of land, all your units will lose health if they are not in your own territory or in garrison stance. But it's not all doom and gloom. This faction also does allow you to unlock army abilities to help counter the Plague of Sleep debuff, and a lot of your units have strong abilities to help make up for their weaknesses. So overall, it gives you a fun, unique, and challenging playthrough. Now let's take a look at the lords and heroes. First, we have this faction's leader, Zhu Yaoji, a vengeful wraith born out of a ritual gone awry. She haunts the eastern colonies seeking vengeance against the elves she believed betrayed her people. I'm a big fan of this lord. I love her whole chain theme. She's got chains on her model, but she also attacks with chains in melee, and she has chain-related abilities like Chains of the Ephemeral, which is a unique bombardment ability that rains down heavy chains on enemies. You'll also notice this faction's units also have two negative abilities you have to watch out for. The first is called Exercised. It's an ability that triggers when your unit's leadership becomes broken, and they will take increased damage as well as some hefty debuffs. Then there's a second ability called Banished. This one triggers whenever a unit's leadership is shattered. There's almost no coming back from this one as it deals massive damage and debuffs your unit. Next is the Jade-Blooded Master Warlock. Jade-Blooded vampires are the exotic eastern bloodline of vampires sired by a long-forgotten blood child of Queen Neferata. They wield terrible curses and command mastery of the spirits. He has a Necro Longma mount option, and he has access to this faction's unique lore of magic called the Lore of the Jade-Blooded. And I'll give you an in-depth look at how it works here. First, you have Call from the Beyond, a basic spell that allows you to summon wild ghosts, basically this faction's lowest tier unit. Then you have Xiaolin's Spirit Seal, another cheap spell that gives one of your units healing, physical resistance, and leadership. And then you have Ancestral Haunting, a direct damage spell that's good against multiple combatants and also reduces their charge resistance and leadership. The Curse of Weng Chang, a solid AoE spell that gives good debuffs in a decent area.
The winds are turning! The enemy is casting spells!
Gate of the Spirit Realm, one of the coolest spells I've ever seen. First, it puts down a quick pit of shades that damages enemies, and then a ghostly giant springs forth and starts whacking enemies. And last, we have Soul Vampirism, which gives you power recharge, power reserves, and vigor, while also dealing damage to an enemy unit and reducing their vigor. Jade-Blooded Matron, another spell-casting lord, this time with a mix of Lore of Shadows and vampires. She also has a unique ability where she can transform into, for some reason, a giant crab. Ancestor Witch. This is a unique lord which can only be recruited through activating a rite. She has two different summon abilities, and this lord is also the only one to have access to the unique Lore of Primeval Witchcraft, this faction's second custom Lore of Magic, which works differently compared to other magic. For this one, each spell has a 100% miscast chance, so you'll want to use items and abilities to lower that miscast chance. O Sorrow Be Consumed, a direct damage spell that also greatly reduces the enemy's speed and melee defense. O Anger Be Brandished, a tear-shaped attack that deals magical and fire damage and imbues Rampage. O Hatred Become Ash, a very strong AoE buff spell for friendly units, but it also does cause them damage as a drawback. O Envy Become Coveted, this is a spell to help reduce your miscast base chance for your next spell, reducing it by 75% and giving you power recharge and reserves. It's only active for 13 seconds, so you have to be quick when casting your next spell. O Death Be Severed, a direct damage AoE spell, good against multiple units with a pretty large radius. O Revenge Be Shattered, a powerful explosion ability that can only be activated on an enemy unit that is winning melee combat. So you can't just place it anywhere, but when you do find a good place for it, it can dish out massive damage. New Goy. Beyond the sealed courts of Cathay is a constant dance of intrigue and death. None ever escape with their dignity or souls intact. This faction's version of a Wraith hero. Jiangjun Revenant. Generals, heroes, and famed heroes of Grand Cathay who have fallen in brutal battle. Although returned as deathly husks, vigorous and proud souls still reside within. An anti-large melee hero with 2 unique stance abilities and a shadow hair death steed. Jade-blooded courtesan. Beautiful and graceful, preserved in undeath. Courtesans of the Jade-blooded vampires trace their connections to the Queen of Mysteries herself. Channeler. Elusive and eccentric mediums and shamans who have chosen to live in seclusion, often deep in the mountains or lonely valleys, in order to dabble in the dark arts of the occult. Another spellcaster, this one has spells from both lore of Jade-blooded and vampires. They also have 2 unique abilities that work together in tandem. Next, we'll take a look at the units. Wild Ghosts. A host of the restless dead whose spirits harbor bitter grudges against sins committed against them by the living. Their deathly touch can sap one's soul. The most basic and lowest tier unit for the Islanders of the Moon. Ravenous Ghosts. A step up from the Hungry Ghosts in terms of stats, however these ghosts have a drawback, an ability called Eternal Hunger, where if they're not in melee they are constantly taking damage and having their vigor reduced. The first regiment of renown that we'll take a look at is the Shadows of Nong Chang. Said to have been monks whose souls came into contact with the taint of the desecrated pool of purification, where the cleansing waters have now become tar-like filth of condensed sin. Overall better stats than the previous ghosts with a unique ability. Unearthed Laborers. The Labor Commission of Cathay has always been keen to stamp curiosity regarding construction malpractices at the Great Bastion. One of the few ranged units for this faction. The Lost 74th Engineer Brigade. An engineering crew sent to reconstruct the Snake Gate after it had been breached in a previous invasion, but after a warpstone explosion incident their bodies were lost in the ruins. Returned. Endless conflict have denied many of proper funeral rites, causing the dead to reenact their final hours over and over. The undead version of Cathay Spearmen. There's also a spear-wielding version. Revenants. Some of the restless dead eventually turn into wights that retain a modicum of lucidity in undeath, and there are those who simply choose to return out of unresolved guilt and dishonor. the undead version of Cathay Jade Warriors. They also have a halberd-wielding version. Yellow Heaven Bannermen. These hardy revenants are disciples of the Way of Peace and the Yellow Heaven, instigators of a great rebellion that tore Cathay's society asunder and brought question to the dragon's rule. Jiangxi. Vampiric corpses of the Far East, infamous for their stiff gait. Their supernatural strength is the dread of many who venture out once the sun sets in Cathay. Puppets of Shang Lun. Master Shang was a celebrated sage of life magics. In his search for immortality, however, he was seduced by the dread art of necromancy and purportedly used corpses as vessels for his soul. They have a unique ability that's called soul transference, which drains their own health but gives a massive boost in stats to an ally. Blood Lions. Clad in ornate scarlet armor, the Blood Lions are the feared guardsmen that stand sentinel within the grand pavilions of the jade-blooded vampires. This faction's high-tier infantry and one of the only armored units in the roster. These next 4 units are former staff of the sanatorium and are unique to this faction. Cursed Islanders. Many colonists from Tor Elisor had volunteered to serve as guards and watchmen over the sanatorium, as the colony was often harassed by pirates and local fauna. Charred Nurses. Languid specters that prowled the grounds of a hospital that once was. Their rusted torches were used to cremate the bodies of the patients they could not save. Hollow Nurses. Spectral nurses of the hospice hall were often tasked with the peaceful euthanasia of patients suffering from the final stages of the plague. Hanged Doctor. Physicians and mages who once served at the Denoy Sarior Sanatorium took their own lives or were murdered by their own patients as the plague outbreak worsened. Yugia Revenants. Fallen heroes of Cathay, now having risen again to ride forth, fight, and once more die in glorious battle. Gore Hags. Fiendish crones said to lurk deep within the mountains. Their gruesome appearance is thought to evoke mad women and widows outcasted by society or spurned by their lovers. Plague Wraiths. Spirits of disease and pestilence. These grim shades were once people who died violent deaths from illness that no medicine nor magic could provide any respite. Starved Marquis. This ravenous ghost was once a petty aristocrat who abused his small influence to indulge in extreme extravagance at the cost of his subjects. Mogwai. These malevolent monsters of the dark underworld, possibly related to demonkin, exist to bring torment on humans perceived to have sinned greatly. Devil of Dark Omen. Master Han died a broken man, tortured by his failed pursuit into academia. Whatever muse inspired him into leading such a life of misery, I pray that no colleague of mine suffers through. A fantastic support unit who you want to have close by but out of combat, as his abilities won't be active unless he's out of melee. Pale Lady. It is unclear whether this phantasm used to be a person that suffered great injustice or rather a malformed creature of the dark, but 'tis certain that its presence brings about insanity. An awesome single entity monster who has a cool fading effect as it moves and a unique ability. Yao Gai. Extremely malicious beings from the Cathayan underworld. They sometimes manifest into the world of men either by a foolish sorcerer's intent or by accident, to the great peril of many. Underworld Gate Guardian. Deep beneath the great dragon river of souls, where many Cathayans believe the deceased venture into their final resting place, exist grim entities said to guard its very entrance. A super unique ethereal giant with the soul harvest ability that boosts winds of magic. Accursed Diao Si Goi. The Diaosi Gai, as Cathayan folklore say, are the lingering spirits of convicted men sentenced to death by hanging, cursed to relive their agonizing ends as the noose crushed their necks. A flying ranged monster unit, it has a crazy creepy look with short range but hard hitting damage. Cursed Jade Carriage. On silent moons, this haunted carriage, once believed to have belonged to a corrupt court official, brings ill omen to whoever witnesses it. Another one of the few ranged units, this one sports the longest range out of them with 120 range. It's definitely not a reliable artillery piece, but it is super fun in melee. These last 4 units are unique regiments renowned for this faction, being former patients of the sanatorium. Shadow People of Ward 6. A great fire once consumed Ward 6 of Denoy Sorior Sanatorium, killing all its patients who were at the time comatose by the plague of sleep. Woman Who Jumped. Kai Lin was one of the patients admitted to the hospice hall. She was last seen on the sanatorium rooftop, having learned that her husband had eloped with another woman in Cathay. One of the coolest and most unique models I've seen of any mod. This lady is literally fighting upside down. This unit has what I think is also a super unique ability called Fear of Falling, which periodically gives enemies near her a 90% debuff to their mass, as long as she's in melee. Contorted Man. Ming Lu's nerves were so ravaged by the plague that it rendered him numb. Unfortunately for him, doctors saw fit to break and twist his body until he could feel again. Lady Yagi. The entity known as Lady Yagi was said to haunt room 401 of the Hospice Hall ruins and caused anyone who saw her to get struck with a terrible sickness. Probably the coolest looking model for this faction in my opinion. She's just a giant, creepy, monstrous amalgamation. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure to subscribe and check out my other videos for more content. We also got some cool merch if you want to support the channel and look good at the same time. Link in the description. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.